Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, I want to talk about 5 core builds. If you can get your head around these 5 core builds, you will be able to do anything in Raid Shadow Legends. I'm probably going to do a follow-on video to this, which is way more specialized builds for Arena, because Arena, certainly in the end game, becomes a whole different style of game. But if you're early to mid, moving into late game, and I class late game as like pushing on to Dungeons 20, then you should understand these builds really well to get the most out of your game. Okay, so we're going to go through the booster, we're going to go through the debuffer, the clan boss champion, the control champion stroke tank, and then the damage dealer. 5 different builds. If you can get your head around these, then you're going to do well in Raid Shadow Legends. To start with the booster, it sounds obvious to me because I've said this for 2 years. Okay, I've been going through it for 2 years and I understand the game really well. But new players coming into the game don't understand these core mechanics, these core builds that you need to get your head around. So let's talk about the booster. Apothecary's one, High Cartoon's another, Arbiter's another. Anyone who's got a turn meter boost, turn meter fill, speed buff, yeah, anyone who's going to accelerate your team faster needs to have a similar style of build. There's a few anomalies to this where you've got, like most of these boosters do not need accuracy in their builds because they don't do anything to the enemy. They don't land debuffs. They don't slow the enemy down. They don't reduce their turn meter. And yet a few of them do, like Lysandra, Lady Kimmy, and what's her name? High Cartoon. They all do something to the enemy. So their build's slightly different, and I'll show you that in a second. But for someone like an Apothecary here, a speed booster, what do we want? We want him to be the fastest person in our team. Ideally, to be the fastest person possible on your account. And I say possible, as in the best speed gear that you own. Okay, so every single piece that I'm wearing here is as fast as it can be for my account on the free-to-play here. Yeah, we're looking for double rolls, at least in speed gear, ideally. For earlier accounts, single rolls. But basically, you're trying to push their speed as fast as you can because they're the type of champion that just keeps your team moving. They keep your team going. So you see here, my Apothecary, I'm like day 135 on the free-to-play. We've got a 300 speed Apothecary. And he is in just about every team that I run. He's in all my dungeon teams. He's in my clan boss team. He's in my arena team. And his purpose is to push the rest of your team on. So if you see in this team here, I don't know if I'm faster or not, but he is my fastest. He will ideally win me the speed race like that. And then the rest of my team start to move. And I'll show you, hopefully, I can show you those teams moving in the next stage. So the base is make him fast, okay? But just about all of these speed boosters, you also don't really get a lot of benefit from hits. They're not really damage dealers. So you start to push towards more defensive stats once you can get the gear to do it. So really fast, and then I'm looking for health and I'm looking for defense. Because ultimately, you need them to stay alive and you need them to move through their abilities as quick as you can. So you'll see things like defense percent gloves, HP, even a flat HP chest. This on a speed booster, it's fine. I'd much prefer this to be HP percentage chest. But I don't have a fast enough one, but I've still got good enough defensive stats at the moment to make it work. Obviously, speed on the boots. And then you're looking for like defense or HP, defense or HP, defense or HP. Yeah, with speed. So everything about the build is around pushing speed, but also pushing survivability. Yeah, and if they go arena specific, you normally see them with Timely Intervention as their main, like tier 6 mastery, but you're pushing things like Laura's Still for more speed. You're probably normally going to go something like Evil Eye to push back turn meter of enemies, because you're going to be rotating back through your abilities really quick. Now, the couple of anomalies that I mentioned, so Lysandra, Lady Kimmy, Prince Kaimar, High Cartoon, these do something to the enemy. So they're still speed boosting champions. Yeah, we've still got the speed boost turn meter fill ability, but they also do something to the enemy. So the example here is High Cartoon's got a decreased speed, and she's also got a turn meter pushback on her 2 skills. So the difference in this build is that I also want accuracy in the build. If I'm just using her for arena, I would forget accuracy. But for other content, I need accuracy as well. And a good rule of thumb for accuracy is take the dungeon level that you're fighting and times it up by 10. That's a good rule of thumb. You can come onto the hellhades.com site, under raid, go to raid stages tool, and it'll actually tell you per piece of content exactly what you need to be able to deal with the accuracy requirements. So if we were on Doom Tower, I don't know, rotation 2, floor, let's just do any old floor, 34, and it'd be like, right, what's the resistance of my enemies? How much accuracy do I need to beat it? So you can go to anything in the game on the raid stages tool and it will tell you that. But this is the anomaly for a booster. Some or a lot don't require this at all, but Lysandra, Hypertune, anyone who's pushing back the turn meter of enemy, you want a bit of accuracy in their build as well. So the main thing you change actually is you put an accuracy banner on and you find a few substats. Maybe you use perception gear to get the accuracy up, and you find a few substats of accuracy in the gear. So that's the booster. The second one then is the debuffer. Now, when I'm thinking debuffer, anyone really who's landing debuffs is a good example, but I'm specifically trying to get my head around the AoE decrease defense champions, the AoE decrease attack champions, anyone who's going to set up the fight for you, okay? Deacon is a great example. Duke's another great example. War Maiden, great example. Zargala. Yeah, they're all the same. They do an ability that basically does an AoE drop defense, or it might be an AoE drop attack, or it might be any other AoE debuff. You want these people to go before the rest of your team, apart from your booster. So it goes booster into debuffer. So they need to be fast as well, but not fastest. So they need to have a good amount of speed. They need to have a good amount of accuracy to land their abilities. Okay, the debuff, you need accuracy to land this. Otherwise, they may as well not be on the team at all. Okay, so the debuffer wants to go second. They want to have a good amount of speed and accuracy. And then generally, other than that, you build survivability again. Some examples, and a good one is Zargala. She can hit. So if someone can hit, you might build a bit of offense. But I'd be like way more on the side of defensive stats than offensive stats for this champion, because they're not your damage. They are setting up your damage. Okay, so you see here, perception gear particularly good. Speed gear is going to be good. And I'm trying to make sure that they go second. They set up the rest of my team. They always land their abilities. And then they stay alive so that they can rotate back through their abilities again. Yeah, you'll see even Duke, who's a level 50. I just took his gloves off, actually. Let me just throw some gloves back on him quick. You see, even a level 50, good speed, good accuracy, and then some defensive stats. Okay, obviously, once you get him to level 60, those defensive stats grow a ton. But debuffers doing the same thing. Another good example, Venomage. Venomage throws out AoE poison, AoE heal reduction, and she is fast. She's got good accuracy, and then she's got good defensive stats. And that's what I'm concentrating on with the debuffer champion. So in terms of Mastery's End for your debuffer, this is kind of like a clan boss style build, so I end up in War Master. But for the specialist debuffer, you want to go Eagle Eye, get the extra accuracy to do their job. You want things like Laura Steel. You want things like Evil Eye to push back turn meter on champions. It depends which one you're running, honestly, but generally you'd specialize more towards landing abilities than doing damage. If it's more of a dungeon runner, then you'd do like a standard clan boss style build. So if we went back into that arena situation for the same fight, you'll see that my booster goes into my debuffer, who needs to land his abilities. Actually got weak hits there typically. And then obviously your damage follows that. So without these two doing their job, and this is the same, it's not just arena, this is the same for dungeons, it's the same for really Doom Tower, like any content, Faction Wars, any content is kind of the same. You just want to rotate back through those abilities as quickly as you can, and you want to land them when you get the chance. Typically, this is taking a bit longer than normal. Get her dead, please. Thank you very much. So yeah, gives you a good feel for the booster and then the debuffer. So after that, I'm looking at, let's go with Control Tank. Now, I don't really have on the free-to-play someone who fits that description very well. So I'm just going to flick onto the main account, which is playing away here on BlueStacks. So a control champion is someone who's going to basically either AoE stun or AoE provoke or some form of control to stop you taking damage. So try and go for a good like 200-ish speed, like a Seal the Drake Zero Dot running at 195 speed. She's an AoE stunner. So you want fast, you want enough accuracy to land the control, a bit like the DBuffer. But then you also want to be able to take either the hits if you're doing provokes, or generally you want a tanky build. So you want someone that's just going to be able to stay alive. Normally, the control champions are defensive-based champions. So, you know, AoE provokes, defense-based champion, someone who can take a hit coming back into them, generally is the control tank. So you're looking for things like HP percent chests and gloves, defense percent chests and gloves. You're looking for speed throughout the substats. Shield set is a nice set to bring into the mix as well. But yeah, you're basically looking for the stats that are going to enable you to take damage. But always don't forget about the speed in these builds. A lot of people, I see these builds and I'm like, 140 speed? Like, they're basically not going to get a turn. There's no point in that. So, you know, you still want to be punching up towards 190-ish speed if you can for your control builds. Of course, as with anything, masteries can vary, but you know, a lot of these style of champions will either have something like Fearsome Presence, so they've got a better chance to land their control as their main mastery. And again, you're doing things like boosting your turn meter, pushing back enemy turn meter, or they'll end up with something like Eagle Eye, which is going to boost your accuracy to land the control. So they tend to be the kind of tier 6 masteries. If you're just pushing something like Doom Tower or damage, then War Master tends to come in again. But more often than not, you want to be using the specialist control style masteries. You do find some with Bulwark if they're actually a straight up tank and you want them to tank damage for your team. But yeah, they tend to be the tier 6 masteries you want for the control tank champ. Okay, let's go on to the Nuka then. We'll skip back to the free to play. So my Nuka, I've got a couple of builds. Magnar is one. You want to make sure that you build your damage around their damage. Most Nukas are probably attack based, honestly, but Magnar's an HP based champion, so he would gain 0 stats. He would gain 0 influence on an outcome of a fight through building attack. Literally 0. So he would need HP to do his damage, whereas a Kale, where all the skills are attack based, would need attack to do his damage. But basically, how do we build a Nuka? You want to be going for 100% crit rates. You want to be pushing speed up to the right level after your debuffer. Normally, again, like a couple of hundred speed is a good level to aim for, but depends on where you are in the game. You know, if you're earlier in the game, it might be like 170-ish speed. If you're later in the game, you might be going 220. But generally, you don't want to go much higher than that. Everyone else should be doing their job to allow your Nuka the stat gain in his damage, not the stat gain in his speed. Your Nuka, you pretty much want to forget accuracy unless you're doing some sort of hybrid build, and you want to be pushing the stat, which pushes damage, alongside crit damage. Okay? If you use the optimizer, then it will actually just suss out the best build for you. I've done a ton of videos on that. But you'll see here, we basically pushed, and you see it's like a mixture of gear. It's not like, oh, all savage, all speed. If you can get all savage, great. But normally, for most people's accounts, it's probably a mishmash of gear like this. And ideally, you want crit damage coming on the gloves and finding crit rate elsewhere in your gear. Yeah, see these extra rolls of crit rate coming in elsewhere. And you want things like the main stat on your rings and your banners to be based on their damage multiplier. So for Magnar, it's HP. For Chaos, it would be attack. And you want crit damage coming in on the amulet. So you're pushing those numbers up as high as you can. If you look at my KO example here, who's in like a weirdish build, really. It's not like a finished build, but the rules are the same. KO's slightly different because his nuke actually gains 15% extra crit rates as standard. So I only need 85% crit rate for him versus the 100. But in my head, I'm still thinking get to 100. I just know that there's an extra 15 in the pot for this one. So get to 100% crit rate. Push the stat that's going to push damage. Push crit damage alongside it. And get the speed to the right level that it's actually going to work. So masteries then on your Nuka. you basically want to be taking masteries which boost your damage. It's not rocket science here. So things like Heart of Glory, 5% more damage, full health. Things like Ruthless Ambush, 8% more damage. Crit rate into crit damage here. Things like Bring It Down, more damage when you've got when you're attacking people with higher HP. Things like Helm Smasher, ignoring defense. You might even bring things like Opportunist if you know that you're going to be freezing or provoking or stunning or sleeping on someone, the enemy. If you're straight up 12% more damage. So generally, it's this style of build. You might bring Cycle of Violence. I'll show you my Magnar one actually quick. Might bring Cycle of Violence, which will get back to your nuke ability quicker, because you're going to do more than a third of people's health the majority of the time. You often go Defense Tree because you're not worried about the support accuracy. And you might take things like Retribution as a counterattack hit, or Deterrence as another counterattack, in case you don't get the job done straight away. And that's how you build your nuker. Okay, and so the fifth build then is going to be around Clan Boss. Now, Clan Boss is kind of very different really to the rest of the game, in that you need to be more defensively minded for most Clan Boss builds. Now, you might be doing something like an Unkillable team. This goes out the window. Unkillable, you're going full offense, almost like this build for everyone for Unkillable, because you can't die. Therefore, defensive stats hold no value to you. You just want offense through and through. Or you want your accuracy to land your debuffs. But for Clan Boss, generally, you're looking at a build that is the right speed for your team. And generally, if you're just kind of new to the game, you know, Nightmare Clan Boss, as an example, runs at 170 speed. Ultra Nightmare 190 speed. And it kind of comes back in 20s from there. So, you know, if you're doing Brutal 150 speed, for example. So you want the right speed for the level of fight that you're doing. Or for the speed tune that you're doing. If you can tune Clan Boss, it's even better. You want enough accuracy to beat up the Clan Boss that you're facing. Again, you can use the Stages tool. But if you're going for Nightmare, somewhere between 170 and 200 is good. Ultra Nightmare, 200 to, well, 230 really is what I'd look for. So speed and accuracy to the right place. Then you want to actually pump up your defensive stats. Yeah, you want to be able to survive the battle that you're going up against. Now, the cap for defense is about 4,200. Your average defense, you actually want to try and punch towards 3k if you can. I do struggle on the free-to-play to get to the level that I want. You know, 3k is a minimum really for a Clan Boss build at Nightmare. But I do get away with this build just about. So I'm punching the right speed for my speed tune. I'm doing enough accuracy to land my stuff. I'm getting my defense up to ideally as close to 4,000 as I can, but depends how far through the game you are. And then you're building your HP up as well to give you survivability. And then your damage comes from things like your poisons, HP burns, Geo reflecting a load of damage, Ninja going crazy. And it's basically like a war of attrition fight where you're just pumping through as many hits as you can in the time that you've got allowed. Clan Boss ramps his damage up over time, but you can normally get to a good 25 turns before he could overcome a build like this even on Nightmare. So it's much more of a defensive-minded build, allowing stuff like poison to do your damage. So in terms of masteries, again, it's kind of, there's some standard ones that you can run. So you almost always want to land on War Master or Giant Slayer, depending on how many hits your champion's A1 does. If it's 1 or 2 hits, normally it's War Master, 3 or 4 Giant Slayer. And you want this kind of diagonal down into a straight line down setup for your Clan Boss champs. If you need a load of accuracy into your build, you would take the support tree. If you don't, you kind of take the defense tree into things like blast proof, delay death, anything really that's going to help you stay alive. So I kind of follow this line here and into this. And you'll see that most of my champions are in what I would class as a Clan Boss build, which also allows them to run dungeons and get some damage away in dungeons as well. This is on the free-to-play. Once you stop having them as kind of like a jack of all trades, they straight up just specialize into your Clan Boss setup like you would find on my main account. Now, obviously, there's a ton of different style of Clan Boss teams nowadays. You know, if I was on my main account, I'd be looking at very different things. You know, if you're going Unkillable, then like say you go full offense, and you kind of need to understand what type of team that you're building. But that's a kind of, you know, early game kind of setup for it, is just sustain the fight and last as long as you can into the fight. And again, if you're using the optimizer, you can kind of optimize for survivability. But if you're not, then you can just kind of bring in things like defense % chests, HP or defense % gloves. You can actually build, if you can go fast enough, defense or HP % boots, and then you're kind of bringing in defensive stats across the board where you can. So there you go, guys. 5 core builds. If you can get your head around those 5 builds, you should be able to push through early, mid, into late game, no problem. And if we were just to kind of show, you know, how some of those builds play out in a dungeon run, which is quite a nice one to have a look at. You can see a mixture: the booster, the debuffer, the nuker, the debuffer again, and control. So my ninja is control here in terms of giving me AoE freeze, but he's also built for some damage on my one. We get the debuffs out. We get more debuffs out here. We go nuke. We have like 30 odd K across the board. We're fighting 20, so it's a reasonable level to fight. Here comes the control. So I needed enough accuracy to land that. And you can see, because of the style of team we're running, we're rotating our abilities really quick with our apothecary and our deek. But it could be any champions in their place. And basically, these guys don't do anything. They don't do anything. And it's all about rotation of abilities in the right order. So, you know, if I had my deacon out of sync here and he was going after my nukers, then I get no benefit from this AoE drop defense at all. So, you know, and if I had ninja going before my damage dealers, then again, we wouldn't get the benefit from the damage. So it's just about rotating through the abilities in the right order, setting your people up in the right way to succeed. And if we were to take hits, I've got enough defensive stats on probably everyone apart from Kale to take those hits and still get 100% run. So this works through, you know, the core idea here works through any form of content. So just lastly, whilst this is running through, I've shared my builds from, so in the optimizer, I can share builds basically. There's a new feature which we put into the optimizer a little while ago, and we're able to share builds. If you're a premium user, you can share. If you're not, you can still access anyone who has shared. So this is great for a clan leader that's always been asked for their builds. You can go in, you can click it, and basically these are the links to my 2 accounts. So I can share, I could create a new share link of this one that I'm running right now, and it could be HH free to play. I can make it expire if I want to. I can have it as a live share or a snapshot. So if I did a snapshot, this is literally my builds as of today, and I'll make them last for a week. Create. And then we've got a new one here, HH free to play, which I can just link to. And you can literally just scroll through any of my champion builds and get a feel for what I'm doing on mine. So this is quite a cool feature just to be able to understand how I'm building them. It also shows any masteries that I'm running. Yeah, so you can kind of get an idea for what I'm doing. But yeah, go on, be speed. Yeah, you can get an idea for what I'm doing, but clearly you can also do the same as well. So there you go, guys. 5 core builds. Hope you enjoyed the video. I've been Hell Hades. I will see you later.